The wind howled through the deserted park, lifting dry leaves into swirling eddies under a gray, ominous sky. Leo, a 3-year-old boy blind from birth, played quietly near his mother, Clara. The park, surrounded by dense forest, seemed like a safe place to spend the afternoon, but in an instant, everything changed. Clara glanced at her phone, distracted for just a few seconds. When she looked up, Leo was gone. Her voice cracked in panic. "Leo, where are you?" The little boy, curious about a distant sound, had wandered off among the trees. Alone and vulnerable, he began to feel the absence of his mother. His heart pounded as he called out, "Mom, help!" But his voice was swallowed by the thick trees, lost in the rustling leaves and howling wind. Leo stumbled forward, his small hands outstretched, searching for something familiar. But all he felt was emptiness. Fear gripped him, and tears streamed down his face. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, an unexpected presence emerged from the shadows. A stray dog with rough fur and deep, knowing eyes stepped out from behind a bush. Thin but determined, the dog watched Leo intently, as if understanding the boy's desperation. It barked once, a low, firm sound that made Leo freeze. There was something in that bark that didn't frighten him. Instead, it reassured him, as if the dog were saying, "I'm here to help." The dog slowly approached, brushing Leo's hand with its nose. The boy felt a strange sense of comfort. "Who are you?" he whispered. While Clara frantically searched the park, her voice cracking as she called Leo's name, the stray dog seemed to have a plan. It moved with purpose, its deep eyes scanning the surroundings as if calculating every step. The dog nudged Leo gently, its wet nose brushing against the boy's small hand. Leo, still disoriented and trembling, felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He couldn't see the dog, but he could feel its presence, steady, protective, and reassuring. "Are you helping me?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His tiny hands reached out, searching for the dog's warmth. The animal responded with a soft whine, as if to say, "Yes, I'm here for you." The dog barked again, this time more decisively, and began walking slowly. It moved with deliberate steps, pausing every few feet to glance back at Leo, ensuring the boy was following. The sound of the dog's paws crunching against the dry leaves became Leo's guide. He stretched out his hand, his fingers brushing against the dog's rough fur whenever it stopped to wait for him. The forest grew denser, the trees closing in around them. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Leo's heart raced, but the dog's presence kept his fear at bay. He could hear the animal's steady breathing, a rhythmic sound that grounded him in the chaos. Meanwhile, Clara's desperation grew with every passing second. Her calls for Leo echoed through the trees, but the dense forest swallowed her voice. She stumbled over roots and rocks, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of her son. The park, once a place of peace, now felt like a labyrinth of danger. The dog, however, seemed to know exactly where it was going. It led Leo away from the densest parts of the forest, toward a path that wound through the trees. Every now and then it would stop, its ears twitching as it listened for sounds of danger. Once, it growled softly, positioning itself between Leo and a rustling bush. A moment later, a rabbit darted out, startling the boy. The dog nudged him gently, as if to say, "It's okay, keep going." Leo's trust in the dog grew with every step. He didn't know where they were going, but he felt safe. The dog's presence was like a shield, protecting him from the unseen dangers of the forest. As they moved deeper into the woods, the dog's plan became clear. It wasn't just leading Leo aimlessly, it was taking him toward safety. The animal's instincts were sharp, its movements calculated. It was as if the dog knew exactly where Clara was, and it was determined to reunite the boy with his mother. The bond between Leo and the dog deepened with every passing moment. The boy, who had never known the comfort of a pet, felt an unspoken connection with the stray. It wasn't just a dog, it was his protector, his guide, his friend. And as the dog led him through the forest, Leo whispered, "Thank you," his voice filled with gratitude. The dog responded with a soft bark, its tail wagging gently, as if to say, "I've got you." Little did Leo know, this was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would change his life forever. The dog suddenly stopped, its body stiffening as if it had sensed something lurking in the shadows. Its ears perked up, and its deep, watchful eyes focused on the underbrush ahead. A rustling sound broke the silence, the crackling of broken branches and the faint shuffle of movement. Leo, unaware of the danger, kept moving forward, his small hands outstretched as he followed the sound of the dog's paws. But the dog was on high alert. It positioned itself firmly between Leo and the source of the sound, its low growl rumbling like a warning. The boy froze, sensing the tension in the air. "What is it?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Before the dog could react, a large deer burst from the trees, its hooves pounding against the forest floor. The sudden movement startled both Leo and the dog. The deer's wide, panicked eyes locked onto them for a split second before it darted away, leaping gracefully over a fallen log and disappearing into the thick bushes. Leo stumbled back, his heart racing. The dog, however, remained calm. It watched the deer vanish into the distance, its body still tense but no longer growling. After a moment, it turned back to Leo, its tail wagging gently. The dog approached the boy and nuzzled his hand, its warm tongue brushing against his skin in a gesture of reassurance. "It's okay," Leo whispered, more to himself than to the dog. He reached out and touched the animal's fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of its breathing. The dog's presence was a comfort, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this vast, unfamiliar forest. The encounter with the deer was a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the woods. But the dog's quick thinking and protective instincts had kept Leo safe. It was as if the animal knew exactly what to do, how to shield the boy from harm. As they continued their journey, Leo stayed close to the dog, his trust in his newfound companion growing stronger. The dog, for its part, remained vigilant, its ears twitching at every sound, its eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. The forest seemed less intimidating with the dog by his side. Leo couldn't see the towering trees or the dense underbrush, but he could feel the dog's steady presence, guiding him forward. It was a bond forged in the face of danger, a connection that would only grow stronger as their journey continued and as the dog led him deeper into the woods. Leo knew one thing for certain. This stray wasn't just a dog. It was his protector, his guardian, and his friend. Clara's heart pounded as she followed the faint, small footprints in the wet ground. The mud clung to her shoes, slowing her down, but she pressed on, her voice breaking as she called out, "Leo, are you there? Please, answer me." Her cries echoed through the trees, but the forest remained eerily silent, save for the rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Then, from somewhere ahead, she heard it, a loud, sharp bark. It wasn't the sound of a wild animal. It was deliberate, almost like a response to her calls. Her breath caught in her throat. "Leo!" she shouted again, her voice filled with desperate hope. "Mom!" Leo's voice rang out, faint but unmistakable. Clara's heart leapt, and she quickened her pace, pushing through the underbrush. But as she drew closer, her relief was quickly replaced by dread. Between her and Leo was a small rushing stream. The recent rains had turned its usually calm waters into a swift, dangerous current. Leo stood perilously close to the edge, his small feet inches from the slippery bank. He couldn't see the danger, his outstretched hands searching for something to hold on to. The dog, however, sensed the threat immediately. It moved with lightning speed, positioning itself between Leo and the water. Its barks were frantic now, sharp and urgent, as if trying to warn Clara of the impending danger. Clara's eyes widened in horror as she realized how close Leo was to falling. "Leo, stay still!" she screamed, her voice cracking. But the boy, hearing his mother's voice, took a step forward, his foot slipping on the wet ground. The dog acted instantly. It lunged forward, gently but firmly pushing Leo back with its nose away from the edge. The boy stumbled but remained upright, his small hands instinctively reaching for the dog's fur. Clara reached them just in time, her arms wrapping around Leo in a tight embrace. Tears streamed down her face as she held him, her voice trembling. "Thank God, Leo, you're safe." She kissed his forehead, her heart still racing from the close call. Then she turned to the dog, her gratitude overflowing. Kneeling beside it, she looked into its deep, knowing eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know who you are, but you saved my child." The dog wagged its tail slightly, a quiet acknowledgement of her words. But there was something in its demeanor, a distant air, as if it knew its mission wasn't yet complete. It stood tall, its gaze scanning the forest, ever vigilant. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this dog was no ordinary stray. It had appeared out of nowhere, guided Leo through the woods, and now saved him from the stream. There was an intelligence in its actions, a purpose that went beyond instinct. As she held Leo close, Clara felt a surge of determination. They weren't out of the woods yet, literally or figuratively, but with the dog by their side, she felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she knew this mysterious animal would protect them. The dog let out a soft whine as if to reassure her and nudged Leo gently. The boy, still shaken but comforted by his mother's presence, reached out to pet the dog. "Thank you," he whispered, his small hand resting on the animal's head. Clara smiled through her tears, her heart swelling with gratitude. This dog wasn't just a stray, it was their guardian, their miracle. And as they stood there by the stream, she knew their lives had changed. As Clara knelt beside Leo, brushing the dirt from his clothes and whispering words of reassurance, the dog suddenly perked up its ears. Its body stiffened, and its deep, watchful eyes locked onto the dense underbrush ahead. A rustling sound broke the stillness, leaves crunching underfoot, branches snapping. The dog's low growl rumbled like a warning, and it positioned itself firmly in front of Clara and Leo, its body taut and ready. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She instinctively pulled Leo closer, her eyes scanning the shadows. The dog barked loudly, its sharp, commanding tone cutting through the forest's silence. It was a sound that demanded attention, a signal that danger was near. From the shadows emerged a man, his figure tall and imposing. A rifle was slung casually over his shoulder, and his weathered face bore the marks of someone who spent long hours in the wilderness. He stepped into the clearing, his eyes narrowing as they fell on Clara and Leo. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his tone polite but laced with something ambiguous, something that made Clara's skin crawl. She hesitated, her protective instincts kicking in. "Yes," she replied cautiously, her voice steady despite the unease churning in her stomach. "We're just trying to get out of the park." The hunter's gaze shifted to the dog, his expression unreadable. "Is that your dog?" he asked, his voice casual but his eyes sharp, calculating. Clara glanced at the dog, which stood firmly between her and the hunter, its growl still rumbling deep in its chest. "No," she said carefully, "but it saved my son." The hunter's lips curled into a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. There was no warmth in that smile, only a cold, calculating gleam. "Strange to find a dog like that around here," he remarked, his tone almost too casual. "He could be useful." The dog's growl intensified, its body lowering into a defensive stance. It stepped closer to Clara and Leo, its eyes never leaving the hunter. Clara felt a surge of protectiveness, both for her son and for the dog that had already done so much for them. The hunter raised his hands in a gesture of mock surrender, but his smile remained. "I didn't mean any harm," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. But Clara didn't trust him. There was something in his demeanor, something in the way his eyes lingered on the dog that set off alarm bells in her mind. The dog, sensing Clara's unease, barked again, a sharp, commanding sound that echoed through the trees. It was as if the animal was trying to send a message. "Stay back!" The hunter took a step forward, his movement slow and deliberate. "That's quite a dog you've got there," he said, his tone now tinged with curiosity. "Looks like he's been trained. Where'd you find him?" Clara's grip on Leo tightened. "He found us," she replied curtly, her voice firm. She wasn't about to share more with this man, not when his intentions were so unclear. The hunter's smile faded, replaced by a look of mild annoyance. "Well, if he's a stray, he might belong to someone. Dogs like that don't just wander around without a purpose." The dog growled again, its teeth bared. Clara could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. She took a step back, pulling Leo with her. "We should go," she said, her voice steady, but her heart racing. The hunter didn't move, his eyes still fixed on the dog. "You know," he said slowly, "a dog like that could fetch a pretty price. If you're not his owner, maybe I could take him off your hands." Clara's stomach churned. The thought of this man taking the dog, their protector, their savior, filled her with dread. "He's not for sale," she said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. The hunter's expression darkened, but he didn't press further. Instead, he shrugged, his smile returning, though it was colder than before. "Suit yourself," he said, "but if you change your mind, you know where to find me." With that, he turned and disappeared into the trees, his figure melting into the shadows. Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stay strong for Leo. The dog, still tense, watched the spot where the hunter had vanished. Its growl softened, but its body remained alert, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Clara knelt beside the dog, her hand resting on its head. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The dog wagged its tail slightly, but its eyes remained fixed on the forest. It was as if it knew the danger wasn't over, that the hunter's threat was just the beginning. As Clara stood, holding Leo's hand tightly, she felt a renewed sense of determination. They had to get out of the park, and they had to do it quickly. But with the dog by their side, she felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them together. The dog let out a soft whine as if to reassure her and nudged Leo gently. The boy, still shaken but comforted by the dog's presence, reached out to pet it. "Thank you," he whispered, his small hand resting on the animal's head. Clara smiled through her tears, her heart swelling with gratitude. This dog wasn't just a stray, it was their guardian, their miracle. And as they stood there in the forest, she knew their lives had changed forever. But the hunter's words lingered in her mind, a chilling reminder that not everyone saw the dog as a hero. Some saw it as a prize, a tool, something to be exploited. Clara clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. No matter what, she wouldn't let anyone take this dog away. With the dog leading the way, Clara and Leo continued their journey, the forest growing darker around them. The threat of the hunter loomed in the shadows, but Clara knew one thing for certain. As long as they had the dog by their side, they had a chance. And that was enough. Days after the harrowing ordeal in the forest, Clara was still trying to process everything that had happened. The dog, now a constant presence in their home, had seamlessly integrated itself into their lives. It slept at the foot of Leo's bed, followed Clara around the house, and seemed to always be on alert, as if guarding them from unseen dangers. Leo, who had been shy and reserved since losing his sight, had blossomed in the dog's presence. He laughed more, his small hands constantly reaching out to touch the dog's fur, his face lighting up whenever the animal nuzzled him. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this dog than met the eye. Its intelligence, its protective instincts, the way it seemed to understand Leo's needs. It was almost as if the dog had been trained for this very purpose. One afternoon, as Clara was preparing lunch, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a man standing on her porch, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. He was in his late 30s, with kind eyes and a weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. Beside him stood a woman, her hands clasped tightly together. "Can I help you?" Clara asked, her tone cautious. The man hesitated, then spoke. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am, but I'm looking for my dog. His name is Ace. He's a trained rescue dog, and he's been missing for months. I heard about what happened in the park, and I think the dog you have might be him." Clara's heart sank. She glanced over her shoulder where Ace, or the dog she had come to think of as Ace, was lying on the living room floor, his head resting on his paws. Leo was beside him, his small hands buried in the dog's fur. The man followed her gaze, and his eyes lit up. "That's him," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "That's Ace." Clara felt a lump form in her throat. She had known, deep down, that this day might come, but she hadn't been prepared for how much it would hurt. Ace had saved Leo's life, had become a part of their family. The thought of losing him was unbearable. The man stepped forward, his expression softening as he saw the bond between Leo and the dog. "I can see how much he means to you," he said gently, "and to your son." Clara nodded, her voice trembling as she spoke. "He saved Leo. If it weren't for him, I don't know what would have happened." The man knelt down, his eyes meeting Clara's. "Ace is a special dog," he said. "He was trained for search and rescue missions. He's saved countless lives. but he's also been through a lot. The accident that separated us, it was devastating. I thought I'd lost him forever." Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at Leo, who was now hugging Ace tightly, his face buried in the dog's fur. The boy had no idea what was happening, but he seemed to sense the tension in the room. The man stood, his gaze shifting to Leo and Ace. "Maybe Ace has chosen to stay with you for a reason," he said quietly. "He's not just a dog, he's a protector, a guardian, and it seems like he's found a new purpose here." Clara's heart ached. He wanted to keep Ace, to give Leo the comfort and security the dog provided, but she also knew how much Ace meant to this man, how much he had sacrificed to find him. The man seemed to sense her inner turmoil. "I'm not here to take him away," he said. "Not if it's not the right thing for him. Ace has always had a mind of his own. If he's chosen to stay with you, then maybe that's where he belongs." Looked at him, surprised. "You'd let him stay?" The man nodded, though his eyes were filled with sadness. "Ace has always been more than just a dog to me. He's a hero, and if he's found a new family, a new mission, then I have to respect that." Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She reached out, taking the man's hand in hers. "Thank you," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to repay you." The man smiled faintly. "Just take care of him. He's been through a lot, but he's got a big heart, and it looks like he's already found a way to fill yours." As the man and his companion left, Clara knelt beside Leo and Ace. The dog looked up at her, his deep eyes filled with a quiet understanding. Leo, sensing her presence, reached out and touched her face. "Mom, is Ace staying with us?" he asked, his voice hopeful. Clara smiled through her tears. "Yes, sweetheart," she said, her hand resting on Ace's head. "Ace is staying with us. He's part of our family now." Ace wagged his tail, a soft whine escaping his throat, as if to say, "I'm here to stay." In that moment, Clara knew that Ace wasn't just a dog. He was a gift, a miracle that had come into their lives when they needed him most, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As she hugged Leo and Ace, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Ace had chosen them, and in doing so, he had given them something priceless: hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The days following Ace's heroic rescue of Leo were filled with a newfound sense of security. Clara watched as her son and the stray dog formed an unbreakable bond. Ace was no longer just a dog, he was family, but that sense of peace was short-lived. One evening, as Clara walked Leo to daycare, she noticed a man lingering near the park entrance. He was tall, with a hood pulled low over his face, and his eyes seemed fixed on Ace. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She tightened her grip on Leo's hand and quickened her pace. Ace, walking beside them, let out a low growl, his ears perked and body tense. "It's okay, Ace," Clara whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring the dog or herself. The man didn't follow, but his presence lingered in her mind like a dark cloud. The next day, it happened again. This time, the man was closer, his gaze more intense. Ace immediately positioned himself between the stranger and Leo, his growl deepening. The man raised his hands in mock innocence. "That's a fine dog you've got there," he said, his voice smooth but unsettling. "Looks like one I've been searching for." Clara's stomach churned. "He's ours," she replied firmly, though her voice trembled. Ace barked sharply, and the man took a step back, his smile fading. He disappeared into the crowd, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That night, Clara called the hunter, her hands shaking as she dialed. "Someone's been following us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's interested in Ace. I think he knows something." The hunter's tone was grave. "Ace isn't just any dog, Clara. He's a highly trained rescue dog. There's a chance he escaped from an accident months ago. A truck carrying trained animals crashed near the park. Some of the dogs were never found. If this man is who I think he is, he's part of an organization that traffics animals like Ace." Clara's heart sank. What do they want with him? "Ace is special," the hunter explained. "He's trained for search and rescue missions in extreme conditions. Dogs like him are worth a fortune on the black market. They'll stop at nothing to get him back." As if on cue, Ace let out a low growl from his spot by the window. Clara peered through the curtains and saw a shadowy figure lurking near the edge of their yard. Her breath caught. "He's here," she whispered into the phone. "Outside the house." "Stay inside," the hunter ordered. "I'm on my way." Clara locked the doors and windows, her mind racing. Leo, sensing her fear, clung to Ace. "What's wrong, Mom?" he asked, his voice small. "Nothing, sweetheart," Clara lied, forcing a smile. "Ace is just keeping us safe." The dog's eyes never left the window, his body rigid with tension. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the hunter to arrive. Finally, headlights illuminated the driveway, and Clara let out a shaky breath. The hunter stepped out of his truck, his expression grim. "They're getting bolder," he said, scanning the yard. "You can't take any chances. Ace is a target, and they'll use any means to get him." Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. "What do? We protect him," the hunter replied, "and we find out who's behind this." As the night wore on, Clara sat with Leo and Ace, her mind racing. The dog, now calm, rested his head on her lap as if to reassure her. Leo stroked Ace's fur, his trust in the dog unwavering. "Ace won't let anything bad happen, right, Mom?" Clara smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart, he won't." But deep down, she knew the danger was far from over. Ace had saved them once, but now it was their turn to protect him. The night was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Clara sat in the living room, her eyes darting to the window every few seconds. Ace, their loyal and protective dog, lay at her feet, his ears twitching at every faint sound. Leo was asleep in his room, blissfully unaware of the tension that had been building over the past few days. The hunter had warned them that the organization might make a move soon, but Clara hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Suddenly, Ace's head shot up, his body tense. A low growl rumbled in his throat as he stared at the front door. Clara's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Ace?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The dog didn't respond, his focus entirely on the door. Then she heard it, a faint scratching sound like someone trying to pick the lock. Panic surged through her veins. She grabbed her phone and dialed the hunter's number, her fingers shaking. "They're here," she whispered urgently. "Someone's trying to break in." "Stay calm," the hunter replied, his voice steady. "I'm on my way. Don't open the door for anyone. Ace will protect you until I get there." Clara hung up and turned to Ace, who was now standing in front of the door, his fur bristling. The scratching turned into a loud thud, and the door shook as someone tried to force it open. Ace barked furiously, his deep, guttural growls echoing through the house. Clara's mind raced. She needed to protect Leo. She ran to his room where the boy was still asleep, undisturbed by the chaos. "Leo, wake up," she whispered, shaking him gently. The boy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Mom? What's wrong? We need to hide, sweetheart. Someone's trying to get into the house." "But Ace is protecting us. Come with me." She grabbed his hand and led him to the small closet in the hallway where they could stay hidden. "Stay here, no matter what you hear. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe, okay?" Leo nodded, his eyes wide with fear, but trusting his mother completely. Clara kissed his forehead and closed the closet door, then returned to the living room just as the front door burst open with a loud crash. Two men dressed in black rushed inside, their faces covered with masks. Ace lunged at the first intruder, knocking him to the ground with a powerful leap. The man screamed as Ace's teeth sank into his arm, but the dog didn't let go. The second intruder tried to intervene, but Ace was too fast. He turned and charged at the man, barking furiously and forcing him to retreat. Clara stood frozen in the hallway, her heart pounding. She wanted to help Ace, but she knew she was no match for the intruders. All she could do was trust the dog to protect them. The first intruder managed to push Ace off and scrambled to his feet, blood dripping from his arm. "Stupid mutt!" he snarled, pulling out a knife. Ace didn't back down. He positioned himself between Clara and the intruders, his growls growing louder. The second man tried to circle around, but Ace was always one step ahead, blocking his path. The dog's movements were calculated, almost like he had been trained for this very moment. Just as the situation seemed to be spiraling out of control, the sound of sirens filled the air. The intruders froze, their eyes darting to the door. "We need to get out of here," one of them shouted. But before they could make a move, the hunter burst through the door, his gun drawn. "Don't move!" he barked, his voice commanding. The intruders raised their hands, their weapons clattering to the floor. Ace stood his ground, his eyes never leaving the men as the hunter handcuffed them. Within minutes, the police arrived and took the intruders into custody. Clara let out a shaky breath, her legs giving out as she sank to the floor. Ace immediately ran to her side, licking her face as if to reassure her that everything was okay. "You're such a good boy, Ace," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us." The hunter knelt beside her, his expression grim. "They're part of the organization," he said. "They were after Ace. But this isn't over. They'll try again." Clara's heart sank. What do? We can't keep living like this. The hunter placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll increase security. I'll have officers patrol the area, and we'll install more cameras. But Ace is the best protection you have. He's not just a dog. He's a hero." As the police cleared the scene, Clara went to check on Leo. The boy was still in the closet, his eyes wide with fear. "Is it over, Mom?" he asked in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart. Ace protected us. He's our hero." She hugged him tightly, feeling a surge of gratitude for the dog who had become such an integral part of their lives. That night, as Clara lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The attack had been too close for comfort, and she knew the organization wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. But as she listened to Ace's steady breathing from his spot at the foot of Leo's bed, she felt a glimmer of hope. Ace had proven time and time again that he would do anything to protect them, and as long as he was by their side, she knew they could face whatever came next. The threat wasn't entirely eliminated, but neither was their determination. Together, they would fight to keep their family safe. Ace wasn't just a dog. He was their guardian, their protector, and their family. And no matter what, Clara vowed to never let anyone take him away. The following morning, Clara sat by the window, staring outside. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind. each moment sending a fresh wave of fear through her. She knew something had to change. A car pulled up outside. The hunter stepped out, Ace trotting beside him. The moment Leo saw the dog, he ran to him, but the hunter gently held up a hand, stopping him. Clara's heart sank. "What's wrong?" The hunter sighed, his expression heavy. "They're still out there. As long as Ace is with you, you're in danger." Leo clung to Clara's side. "No, Ace has to stay." The hunter knelt beside the boy. "I know, buddy, but I need to keep him safe just for a little while." Clara swallowed hard, glancing at Ace, who sat obediently beside the hunter, his eyes locked onto Leo with an almost knowing look. She wanted to fight it, to say no, but deep down, she knew the hunter was right. She nodded slowly. "Take care of him." The hunter gave a firm nod, placing a reassuring hand on Ace's back. "I promise, when it's safe, I'll bring him home." Ace let out a soft whine, nudging Leo's hand one last time before stepping into the hunter's vehicle. As the car drove away, Leo buried his face into his mother's side, silent tears running down his cheeks. Clara watched them disappear into the horizon, her heart heavy with uncertainty. The battle wasn't over yet. The night was thick with tension as the hunter and David stood outside the remote facility, their breaths barely visible in the cold air. The compound was eerily silent, hidden deep within the forest. Shadows moved behind the chain-link fence, the faint glow of flashlights betraying the presence of guards. This was the heart of the animal trafficking operation, a place where creatures like Ace were taken, trained, and sold to the highest bidder. David signaled to the team. In a swift, coordinated motion, they moved into position. The plan was simple: breach, rescue, and retrieve evidence to dismantle the organization for good. But they all knew it wouldn't be that easy. Inside, rows of cages lined the walls, the frightened eyes of animals peering through the darkness. Some whined softly, sensing danger, or perhaps hope. Ace, crouched beside the hunter, was alert, his muscles tense as he waited for the right moment. He wasn't just an observer, he was part of the mission. A low growl rumbled in Ace's throat. He had picked up something. Someone was approaching. The hunter gave a nod, trusting the dog's instincts. Within seconds, 2 guards rounded the corner. The team remained hidden, waiting for the right moment. But Ace had other plans. With a burst of speed, he lunged forward, knocking one of the men to the ground before the second could react. A scuffle broke out, but the team moved swiftly, subduing the guards before they could raise the alarm. "We need to move fast," David whispered, his eyes scanning the facility's security cameras. "We've got about 10 minutes before backup arrives." The hunter wasted no time, breaking open the nearest cages. Dogs, exotic birds, and even a rare tiger cub emerged, some too weak to move, others bolting toward the open exit. Ace, ever the guardian, nudged the hesitant ones forward, guiding them toward freedom. But just as they were making progress, a loud siren blared through the facility. "They know we're here," David muttered, pulling out his weapon. A group of men stormed into the room, weapons drawn. A voice boomed over the intercom. "You think you can just walk in and take what's ours?" It was the leader of the operation, that dog. "He's worth more than all of you combined." Ace bared his teeth, standing his ground. He wasn't going anywhere. A fight broke out. The team exchanged fire with the criminals while Ace darted between them, his powerful form striking like a shadow. He knocked weapons from hands, bit at exposed limbs, and guarded the entrance as the last of the animals escaped. Outside, the police sirens grew louder. The traffickers, realizing they were outmatched, began to flee. But the leader wasn't given up so easily. He locked eyes with the hunter and smirked, disappearing into the chaos. "This isn't over," the hunter growled, watching him slip away. By the time the police secured the facility, most of the criminals had been arrested, but their leader had vanished into the night. Evidence of the operation was everywhere: illegal documents, tracking devices, and disturbing records of stolen animals. It was enough to bring the entire network crumbling down. As the sun began to rise, Clara sat by the window, waiting. The phone rang, and she flinched before answering. A low voice crackled through the line. "We warned you. You should have stayed out of this." Her blood ran cold. "Who are you?" A sinister chuckle echoed before the line went dead. The days following the raid were filled with uncertainty. The traffickers had been dismantled, but their leader had escaped, leaving a lingering threat in the air. Clara couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Even with security increased around the house, sleep didn't come easily. Every creak in the night made her heart race. Ace had been taken to a safe location with a hunter, away from prying eyes, but the house felt emptier without him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, headlights swept across the driveway. Clara's pulse quickened as she hurried to the door. Leo, who had barely smiled since Ace left, ran past her, his small feet pattering against the wooden floor. The hunter stepped out of the vehicle first, scanning the area before opening the back door. Then there he was, Ace. His sharp eyes met Clara's, and for the first time in days, her shoulders relaxed. He was home? Ace. Leo's voice cracked with emotion as he sprinted forward. The dog rushed toward him, tail wagging wildly, his massive frame nearly knocking the boy off balance. Leo clung to him, burying his face into Ace's fur. "I missed you so much," he whispered. Clara approached, her throat tight. She knelt beside them, running her fingers through Ace's coat. "Welcome home," she murmured, her voice shaken. Ace nuzzled into her touch, his warmth grounding her. The hunter cleared his throat, his voice measured. "The fight isn't over, but for now, he's safest here. The leader is still out there, but with the evidence we found, it won't be long before he has nowhere left to hide." Clara exhaled, nodding. "We'll be ready." That night, for the first time in weeks, their home felt complete. Ace curled up at the foot of Leo's bed, his steady breathing filling the room with a sense of comfort. Clara stood in the doorway watching as Leo wrapped his small arms around Ace, whispering, "You're my best friend." The days that followed brought something unexpected: hope. Word of Ace's heroism had spread, and soon the town decided to honor him. The park buzzed with excitement as families gathered for the ceremony. Clara had never seen so many people in one place, all drawn together by a single dog's courage. When the mayor took the stage, his voice carried over the crowd. "Heroes come in many forms," he said, gesturing toward Ace, who sat proudly beside Leo. "But true heroism is defined by selflessness, by unwavering loyalty. Tonight, we celebrate Ace, a protector, a savior, and a symbol of hope." A round of applause erupted, and Leo beamed with pride. He knelt beside Ace, placing a small medal around his neck. "You deserve this, buddy," he said with a grin. Ace let out a happy bark, and for the first time in a long while, Clara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had finally turned the page. But as the sun set and Ace's eyes flickered toward the darkening horizon, she knew the story wasn't over yet. Not entirely. With the trafficking network destroyed, life slowly began to return to normal. The fear that had once gripped Clara's home had started to fade, replaced by quiet moments of peace. Ace remained ever watchful, but his demeanor had changed. He was calmer now, no longer burdened by the constant threat of danger. It was as if he knew, finally, that he was home for good. Leo and Ace were inseparable, spending their days playing in the yard and their nights curled up together. Every laugh that echoed through the house was a reminder of how far they had come. One evening, as Clara watched them chase fireflies in the fading light, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. This dog, once a stray, had become their guardian, their protector, and their family. She reached down to scratch behind Ace's ears. "You saved us, you know," she whispered. Ace leaned into her touch, his warm brown eyes filled with understanding. He didn't need words to respond. He had always known where he belonged, and now, so did she.